You think you know the person you sleep next to? You think Thanksgiving is about family. I thought so too until my husband announced to his entire family that he was expecting a child with another woman. 1 month ago, I signed papers to protect our future. I was wrong. I signed my own death warrant. They do not know that for the next 30 days. I will not cry. I will calculate. And I will take back everything. My name is Alara Vance. I'm 32 years old, and my world is built on data. At quantum dynamics, I analyze patterns, predict outcomes. I see the skeletons of truth hidden in numbers. Which is why it's so ironic that I never saw this coming. The Thorne family home in Beacon Hill is not a house. It's a fortress of new money desperate to look old. Thanksgiving here is always a performance. The air in the grand dining room was suffocating, thick with the scent of time-roasted turkey and the faint, acidic smell of Isabella's expensive, joyless perfume. I was trying to breathe. The clinking of heavy silver against porcelain was too loud, a nervous percussion against the strained silence. My husband, Marcus Thorne, arrived late. This was not unusual. His disrespect for time was a signature move. But his energy was different. He was vibrating, a taut wire of agitation and a strange, triumphant excitement. He wasn't alone. Sophia Keller, a so-called family friend I'd only met twice, drifted in beside him, her hand brushing his arm. The tension in the room shifted. It focused. My mother-in-law, Isabella, who had been supervising the decanting of the wine, kept shooting me glances. They weren't hostile. Not exactly. They were saturated with a bizarre, suffocating pity. It made my skin crawl. His father, Damien, a man who measured his words in dollars, simply ignored me, as if I were part of the hired help. We reached the toast. Champagne flutes were raised. I was holding a heavy crystal glass, watching the bubbles rise, when Marcus stood up. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor. I expected him to thank me. I had orchestrated this entire meal, from the floral arrangements to the gluten-free stuffing for his aunt. He did not look at me. He looked at Sophia. He reached out and placed his hand, flat and possessive, on her abdomen. The room, which had been buzzing with false cheer, fell utterly silent. Sophia and I wanted to share some wonderful news, Marcus said, his voice ringing with a disturbing pride. We're expecting a baby boy. I felt the blood drain from my face, but my hand remained steady on my glass. The silence broke. It didn't break with gasps of horror or outrage. It shattered into applause. Isabella burst into tears. Genuine, ecstatic tears. An heir, she whispered, rushing to hug Sophia. A Thorne heir. Damien clapped Marcus on the back, a rare smile cracking his severe face. Well done, son. Well done. They were all in on it. Every single one of them. Not one person, not one pair of eyes, turned to me. I was a statue at the feast, invisible. And then my analyst brain, the part of me that sees patterns, clicked into place. A single phrase echoed in my head. 1 month later, 1 month ago, 30 days. Marcus, in our home office, sliding a thick stack of documents across the polished mahogany desk. Just a simple restructure of the portfolio. Alara, he'd said, not looking up from his phone. Tax reasons. It protects us. I had signed, preoccupied with a massive project at work. I had trusted him. A senior data analyst, had signed a multi-million-dollar document without reading the fine print. I understood everything in that instant. The pitying looks from Isabella, Damien's dismissal. This pregnancy was not a mistake, a passionate, regrettable affair. It was a strategy. It was a deadline. This was not an infidelity. This was an acquisition. And I had just funded my own destruction. My hand finally moved. The glass of Cabernet tilted, a slow, deliberate fall. The dark red wine splashed onto the pristine, cream-colored Aubusson carpet, a perfect, vivid stain spreading like arterial blood. The room erupted again, this time in shrieks. The carpet! I stood up, my legs feeling strangely solid beneath me. I placed a hand on my throat, my expression a carefully crafted mask of distress. "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice clear and calm. "It must be my shellfish allergy flaring up. I'm feeling quite unwell. I'm not allergic to shellfish." Before Marcus could untangle himself from his new, celebrated family, I turned and walked. I didn't run. I moved with purpose, through the dining room, across the marble foyer, and out the heavy oak door into the cold Boston night, my face an absolute, beautiful, terrifying blank. Rain smeared the windshield of my Audi, turning the city lights of Boston into long, bleeding streaks of neon. I did not turn left toward the penthouse Marcus and I shared in Back Bay. I drove straight past the turn, my hands gripping the leather steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I checked into the Mandarin Oriental under my maiden name, paying cash for a suite on the top floor. The silence of the hotel room was heavy, but it was better than the lies waiting for me at home. I sat on the edge of the pristine bed and stared at the rain lashing against the glass. Memories began to surface, not as warm comforts, but as sharp shards of glass. I remembered meeting Marcus at a mixer during our final year at university. He was dazzling. He possessed a hunger that I mistook for ambition. The Thorne family had money, but it was loud, desperate money. They built strip malls and parking garages. My family, the Vances, were different. We were quiet. We were old money and foundational technology. Marcus looked at me not like a woman he wanted to love, but like a vault he wanted to crack. He resented the ease with which doors opened for me, and he coveted the legacy attached to my name. I remembered the early days of our marriage. I had used a significant portion of my inheritance to seed his venture capital fund. $5 million. It was supposed to be the foundation of our empire. He took over the management of our joint assets, claiming I was too busy with my work at Quantium Dynamics to worry about the minutiae of the market. I believed him. I thought we were building a life together. I was a fool. He was not investing our money. He was parking it. He was waiting for the right moment to steal it. The memory of exactly 1 month ago hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was a Tuesday morning. Marcus had been standing by the kitchen island, sipping espresso, looking casually handsome in his silk robe. He slid a thick stack of documents toward me across the marble counter. "Just a standard restructuring, Alara," he had said, his voice smooth, devoid of any tremor. "The tax laws are changing next quarter. This LLC setup protects us from unnecessary liability. Just sign here, here, and here." I had been late for a board meeting. I was distracted. I trusted him. I took the pen and signed my name on the dotted lines without reading a single clause. I signed away my safety because I thought I was signing for our future. I stood up and walked to the window. My reflection stared back at me, ghost-like against the dark city. The tears I expected did not come. Instead, a cold, familiar sensation washed over me. It was the feeling I got when I encountered a corrupted dataset at work. The emotional part of my brain, the part that was a wife and a lover, began to shut down. In its place, the analyst awakened. I was no longer Alara, the betrayed wife. I was Alara, the senior analyst, and I had just identified a critical system failure. Marcus Thorne was not a husband. He was a variable. He was a glitch, and glitches needed to be isolated and purged. I reached into my bag and pulled out my personal phone. It was vibrating with calls from him. I held the power button down until the screen went black. Then, I pulled out my work laptop. It was a heavy, black machine with military-grade encryption and satellite uplink capabilities, designed for high-level corporate espionage defense. I placed it on the desk and opened the lid. The screen glowed with a harsh blue light. I cracked my knuckles. The game was not over. It had just begun. I needed to see exactly what I had signed. I needed to dissect the lie before I could cut it out. I sat at the small desk in the hotel room, the glow of my laptop screen the only light in the suffocating darkness. My fingers hovered over the encrypted call application. I was not calling the police. I was calling someone far more dangerous. Mrs. Albright operated out of a steel and glass tower in Manhattan. She had been the Vance family attorney for 40 years. She was a woman who regarded emotions as inefficiencies and treated the law like a weapon. It was 11 at night, but I knew she would answer. She never slept. When the line connected, her voice was crisp, devoid of sleepiness. I skipped the pleasantries. "I need you to pull a filing," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "It is a Delaware entity. Thorne Vance Capital LLC. Filed approximately 30 days ago." I heard the rapid clicking of a mechanical keyboard on the other end. She told me to give her an hour. That hour was the longest of my life. I paced the length of the hotel suite, measuring the carpet and footsteps. I felt like a prisoner awaiting a verdict. When the phone finally buzzed, the sound was loud enough to make me jump. "Alara, Mrs. Albright said. Her tone had changed. The professional detachment was gone, replaced by a sharp, incredulous edge. "What exactly did you think you were signing?" I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I told her Marcus said it was a tax shelter, a restructuring of our joint portfolio. There was a silence on the line, heavy and judgmental. "You are not a partner in this company." "Ilara," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "You are not an equity member. You are a creditor." I stopped pacing. I did not understand. She explained it to me, her words slicing through the air like scalpels. The document I signed was not a partnership agreement. It was a transfer of assets combined with a subordinate loan agreement. I had voluntarily transferred 80% of my liquid assets, and worse, my entire voting block of shares in Quantium Dynamics, into this new LLC. "But I own half of it." "Right?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "No," she replied. "Marcus is listed as the sole managing member. You have effectively loaned him your life savings and your inheritance. And because you are not a member, you have no voting rights, you have no oversight. You have handed him the keys to the vault and locked yourself outside." I sank onto the bed. The room seemed to spin. "It gets worse." Mrs. Albright continued, "I am looking at the repayment terms. Clause 14, Section C. The principal of the loan is to be repaid at the sole discretion of the managing member." I closed my eyes. Translation: never. He never had to pay me back. It was legal theft. I realized with a sickening jolt what I had actually done. I had not just lost my money. I had funded his exit strategy. I had paid for the diamond earrings Sophia was probably wearing right now. I had paid for the nursery. I was the investor in his new life, a silent partner in my own humiliation. "Why the rush, Mrs.?" Albright asked, her voice thoughtful. "What do you mean?" "This operating agreement is sloppy," she said. "It is aggressive, yes, but it is loose. If I had drafted this for him, I would have buried these clauses deeper. It looks like it was thrown together over a weekend. Why did this need to be done 30 days ago?" The timeline clicked into place. The pregnancy. He had a deadline. He needed to secure the assets before the announcement. He knew that once I found out about the baby, I would file for divorce and freeze the accounts. He needed the money to be his, legally, before he dropped the bomb. "He needs liquidity," I whispered into the phone, staring at the rain-streaked window. "He needs cash. He is liquidating your assets." "Ilara," Mrs. Albright confirmed. "He is cashing out before you can fight back." I disconnected the call with Mrs. Albright and turned my full attention to the laptop. My heartbeat was no longer erratic with panic. It was a slow, steady, metronomic beat. This was my territory. Marcus was an amateur playing in a professional's arena. He might know how to charm investors, but I build the systems that catch men like him. When I set up our home network and cloud services, I did it to the same specifications I use for my executive clients. Marcus had no idea that I was the root administrator for every device he owned. He had no idea that deleting a file from our shared cloud drive only flagged it for removal, pending my administrative override. He thought he was covering his tracks. He was just creating a breadcrumb trail. I bypassed his personal credentials and entered the system through the administrative backend. My screen filled with lines of code and file directories. I initiated a deep recovery sweep of the shared drive's archive, specifically targeting all files deleted in the last 60 days. The first hit was a folder labeled LLC Drafts. My fingers flew across the trackpad, opening the documents. There were 3 versions. The one I signed was the final draft. The first draft was almost comical in its transparency. It was titled MV Asset Transfer and contained clauses so blatantly one-sided they would have been flagged by a first-year paralegal. He had gotten smarter, progressively obfuscating the language until it became the document I'd signed a masterpiece of fraudulent intent wrapped in bland corporate jargon. But that was just sloppy. The next recovery was the kill shot. He had backed up his phone messages to the cloud, a setting I had enabled years ago. He had deleted the conversation, but the encrypted backup remained on the server. I pulled the file. It was a message thread between Marcus and his father, Damien, from 35 days ago. Damien, is she going to be a problem? Marcus, she's distracted, overwhelmed with that Quantium project. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. Damien, good. Just get her to sign. Once the shares are in the LLC, we can dilute her family's controlling interest at the next board meeting. It's time for the Thorns to take over. My breath hitched. I read the words again and again. This wasn't just about stealing my inheritance. This was never just about a baby or an affair. This was a hostile corporate takeover. They were using my own money to seize my family's legacy. The baby, the announcement, the humiliation, it was all a diversion. The emotion that rose in me wasn't sadness. It was a cold, pure rage. My focus sharpened to a razor's edge. I pivoted from the file recovery to the financial data. The LLC had been established with a new bank account. Using the formation documents I now possessed, I navigated the bank's digital portal. His password was, predictably, the name of his first car, Amateur. The transaction ledger was short, but it told a clear story. The massive influx of my assets, and one significant outflow. 1 week ago, a wire transfer for $500,000. The recipient was not a stock or a bond. It was a shell company, SK Holdings, LLC. I opened a new tab. A quick search of the Massachusetts Business Registry. SK Holdings, LLC, was registered 2 weeks ago. The sole beneficiary and agent on file, Sophia Keller. My blood ran cold. I ran a property search linked to the shell company. There it was. A pending sale on a modern 5-bedroom glass house in Weston. The $500,000 was the exact amount for the non-refundable down payment. He had bought his mistress a mansion using my money, days before he planned to publicly destroy me. I went back to his email archives. He hadn't just deleted the messages, he had moved them to a hidden folder, thinking I wouldn't find it. I found it in seconds. The last email to Sophia was sent just yesterday. Just be patient until Thanksgiving. My love. After everyone knows, she won't be able to do anything. She'll be too humiliated to fight back. The plan will be complete. We can move into the new house by Christmas. I closed the laptop. The predator mode was complete. I had the drafts. I had the conspiracy. I had the money trail. I had the motive. He thought I would be humiliated. He thought I would cry. He had miscalculated the data. I was not a problem to be managed. I was the solution. The shuttle flight from Boston to New York the next morning felt less like a commute and more like a troop deployment. I did not sleep. I spent the 45 minutes in the air mentally rehearsing every variable, every potential counter-argument. By the time I walked into the lobby of the Albright and Associates Tower in Manhattan, I was no longer vibrating with rage. I was cold, hard, and focused. Mrs. Albright was waiting for me. Her office was a corner suite on the 52nd floor, a fortress of glass and steel that looked down on the city with predatory indifference. She sat behind a desk that cost more than most people's cars, her silver hair pulled back in a severe, immaculate bun. She did not offer me coffee. She simply gestured to the chair opposite her. I did not sit. I reached into my bag and pulled out the encrypted hard drive containing everything I had harvested the night before. I placed it on the polished ebony surface of her desk. The sound of the plastic hitting the wood was sharp and definitive. This drive contains proof of conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and a flagrant breach of fiduciary duty, I said, my voice steady. It includes the original drafts of the LLC agreement, deleted correspondence between Marcus and his father detailing a hostile takeover of Quantium Dynamics, and bank records showing the transfer of $500,000 to a shell company owned by his mistress. Mrs. Albright raised an eyebrow, a flicker of genuine interest crossing her face. She picked up the drive and plugged it into her secure terminal. For 10 minutes, the only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioning and the rapid clicking of her mouse. I watched her eyes scan the documents. Slowly, a smile appeared. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. "He is sloppy," she murmured, leaning back in her leather chair. "He is arrogant. He truly thought you were too stupid to look." I sat down then, crossing my legs. "So, do we have enough for a divorce?" Mrs. Albright shook her head immediately. "We are not going to sue for divorce. Not yet. Divorce is messy. It is emotional. It gives him time to hide assets and drag you through the mud. No, Ilara, we are going to attack the structure itself. We are going to void the LLC entirely." I frowned. "But I signed the papers. My signature is on every page. He has a binding contract. That is where he made his mistake," she said, tapping a manicured fingernail on her desk. I recognized the names of the attorneys who drafted this. "Jameson and Locke. They are the Thorne family lawyers. Correct?" I nodded. "They have represented his father for decades. And," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "they also represented you in your personal tax filings last year. They have a fiduciary duty to you, Ilara. By drafting a document for your husband that is clearly detrimental to your interests, without advising you to seek independent counsel, they have committed a severe ethical violation. It is a massive conflict of interest." I felt a spark of hope. "Furthermore," she added, leaning forward, "he lied to you about the purpose of the document. He called it a tax restructuring. The emails to his father prove his intent was actually asset stripping and corporate theft. That is fraud in the inducement. It renders the contract voidable. So we can stop him." I asked. "We can do better than stop him." She said, "We can crush him. We are going to prepare a temporary restraining order to freeze the LLC and all associated accounts immediately. We will catch him with his pants down. Quite literally." She paused, her expression turning serious. "But to make this stick, to guarantee the judge grants the freeze without a hearing, I need one more thing. I need undeniable proof that he is actively liquidating your funds right now to deny you access. The house deposit is good, but I need something immediate. I need him to admit, on record, that the money is gone." "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Mrs. Albright looked me in the eye. "You need to go back to Boston. You need to go back to that penthouse. And you need to act. You need to be the weeping, broken wife he expects you to be. You need to make him feel so safe, so superior, that he admits he has locked you out of your own fortune." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "I can do that." "Excellent," she said, turning back to her screen. "Get the confession. I will have the paperwork ready to file the moment you give me the signal. Go home. Ilara. It is time to put on a show." The flight back to Boston was a blur of tactical planning. I walked into our penthouse apartment. The silence sterile and cold. The sweeping views of the Charles River, which I once found beautiful, now just looked like a long, dark drop. Before I even took off my coat, I reached into my purse and activated the micro recorder. It was a high-grade piece of tech from Quantium's security division, no bigger than a cufflink. I slipped it into the pocket of my blazer. He was there, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, nursing a glass of scotch. He looked like he had not slept. Good. He turned when he heard me, his face a mask of practiced contrition. "Ilara," he said, rushing toward me, his voice thick with fake emotion. "Oh, God, Ilara, thank you for coming home." I let him take my hands. His were clammy. "Ilara, I am so sorry," he whispered, trying to pull me close. I flinched, and he wisely stepped back. I panicked. It happened. It was a mistake. But we can work through this. I will take care of Sophia and but you are my wife. You are my life." I looked at him, my expression carefully calibrated to be one of shocked, hollow devastation. I let my shoulders slump. I let a tear well in my eye, but I did not let it fall. I played the part of a woman in deep, paralyzing shock. I do not know what to think. "Marcus," I said, my voice a broken whisper. "My whole life it is just gone." No, baby, do not say that," he said, his relief palpable. He was so glad I was crying, not screaming. I looked away from him, toward the skyline. But everything, our money, our future. I signed those papers. "Marcus, what happens to our investments now?" He visibly relaxed. The tension left his shoulders. I had taken the bait. He thought I was worried about my financial security with him, not from him. He saw me as a practical, panicked partner, not an adversary. "That is why I did it," he said, his tone shifting to one of patient, condescending reassurance. He stepped closer, placing his hands on my shoulders. "I did it to protect us, to protect our assets from any potential legal messiness. The LLC secures everything. You are completely protected. I am taking care of it." I looked up at him, manufacturing the perfect, desperate plea. I cannot be here. I need to get away. I need to think. "Of course, baby. Whatever you need. I need some money," I said, letting my voice crack. I let the tear fall. "I need about $100,000, just to go somewhere. A hotel? Europe? I do not know. Just from our joint account. So I can think." I watched his face change. The mask of contrition slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. A flash of annoyance crossed his features before he smoothed it away. "Oh, Ilara," he said, sighing. "That is just not possible." "What do you mean?" "It is not possible," I whispered, feigning panic. "It is my money. It is our money." He corrected me, gently. "And it is all tied up right now. It is in the new LLC. It has been reallocated. To get that amount of cash, it would take weeks to unwind. It is just not liquid. Baby, you have to trust me. I am managing it. Please, just trust me." There it was, the confession. He had just admitted, on a high-fidelity recording, that he had locked me out of my own assets and that I could not access them. I nodded, wiping my fake tear. "Okay, Marcus. Okay. I need a shower." He looked relieved. "Of course. Take your time. We can talk more tonight." He went to the kitchen to pour himself another drink, his victory lap. I walked toward the bedroom, but as I passed the hall table, his phone, which he had left charging, lit up. A new message. I did not need to touch it. The preview on the lock screen said everything. It was from Sophia. "Did you tell her? When can we move into the new house? The baby is kicking." I stood there for a second, the image burning itself into my brain. I did not feel hurt. I felt nothing but the ice-cold certainty of his complete and total destruction. I had the confession. Now I just needed the visual confirmation. I left the penthouse claiming I needed air. Marcus, buoyed by my fragile, broken performance, was all too happy to see me go. He probably had calls to make, a new life to arrange. He thought I was driving to the waterfront to stare at the harbor and cry. I was not crying. I was driving west on the pike. The address I had pulled from the SK Holdings LLC registration led me to Weston, a town defined by its quiet, sprawling estates and old-world money. It was a 40-minute drive from the city. I parked my car 2 streets away, on a quiet, leaf-strewn lane, and walked. I pulled the hood of my coat up, my phone already in my hand, its camera set to record video. The house was not a home. It was a statement. A cold, angular structure of glass and steel. It was the exact opposite of our Beacon Hill apartment. It was a house built to be featured in a magazine, not to be lived in. I did not have to wait long. I saw him. Marcus was standing in the open, 3-car garage, directing 2 men from a high-end furniture company. He was pointing, smiling, looking every bit the lord of the manor. And then she appeared, walking out the front door. Sophia Keller. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere maternity dress, her hand resting on her stomach. They were unloading new furniture, a sofa, chairs, a dining table. I kept my distance, hidden by a row of ancient maples, the zoom on my phone camera crystalline. And then I saw it. Marcus carried a large, canvas-wrapped object out of the moving truck. He and Sophia stood in the cavernous living room, visible through the wall of glass. They were discussing where to hang it. He tore the wrapping away. My stomach turned to ice. It was our painting, an abstract watercolor landscape we had bought in a small, dusty gallery in Positano during our honeymoon. It was the centerpiece of our bedroom. It was the one tangible thing that represented a time I believed was real. He had taken it from our home and was now hanging it in theirs. I kept recording, my hand as steady as a surgeon's. A few minutes later, a black Mercedes sedan rolled up the long driveway. My mother-in-law and father-in-law. Isabella Thorne stepped out, beaming, carrying a large pastel blue gift bag. Damien got out, looked at the house, and gave Marcus an approving nod. They went to the trunk. Isabella and Damien, together, lifted out a large, flat-packed white box. I zoomed in. The label was unmistakable. It was a luxury baby crib. They were laughing. All of them. Marcus, Sophia, Isabella, and Damien. They looked like a perfect, happy family, celebrating a new home, a new life. They were standing in a multi-million-dollar house, paid for with my money, celebrating the child that was meant to replace me, surrounded by my stolen possessions. This was not just Marcus. This was the entire Thorne clan. They were all in on it. This was a conspiracy, planned and executed by a family of vipers. As I watched, Sophia picked up a set of keys from the newel post. She walked outside, past Marcus, and got into a brand-new, metallic blue Maserati. It had no license plates yet, just a temporary tag taped to the rear window. I zoomed in as far as the camera would go, holding my breath until the image sharpened. The temporary registration. It was blurry, but I could make out the name of the purchaser. Registered to Thorne Vance Capital, LLC. He had bought his mistress a $100,000 car using the very corporation he had created to steal my legacy. The audacity of it, the sheer, unadulterated arrogance, was breathtaking. I stopped recording. I looked down at the phone in my hand. I had the video of the house. I had the video of the family. I had the video of the crib. I had the proof of the car. Any last lingering scrap of emotion I had for the man I married, any memory of the life we shared, any trace of the woman who had cried in a hotel room, evaporated. The pain from seeing the painting was gone. The shock of the baby was gone. All of it was burned away, leaving behind only a cold, hard, and absolute resolve. They were building a dream. I was going to enjoy tearing it down. I was back in the hotel suite. I had uploaded the video files, the audio confession, and the photographic evidence of the Maserati's registration to Mrs. Albright's secure server. I was staring at the clock on the wall, waiting for her confirmation. When my encrypted phone rang, it was her. I answered, expecting congratulations. I was wrong. The judge denied the temporary restraining order. Mrs. Albright said, her voice flat, devoid of any emotion. My blood turned to ice. I gripped the edge of the desk. What do you mean? We have the fraud, the conflict of interest, the confession. It did not matter, she said. The judge is an old-school conservative. He saw your signature. Ilara. He ruled that a contract is a contract, and you are just a wealthy wife with signatory's remorse. He said Marcus, as the managing member, is within his rights to move assets as he sees fit. The order is denied. The floor fell out from under me. For the first time since Thanksgiving, my legs truly buckled. I sat hard on the bed. He won. After all of this, he just won. So, it is over, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Mrs. Albright was silent for a beat, and then I heard a sharp, almost humorless laugh. Over, she said. Ilara, please, do not be dramatic. I am not a divorce attorney. I am a corporate litigator. I told you we were not attacking this on emotion. The fraud argument was just the appetizer. I did not understand. But the contract. Yes, the contract, she said, her voice turning sharp and precise, like a surgeon picking up a new blade. I have spent the last 4 hours reading the document you signed, line by line, not the fraud, but the text itself. And Marcus, in his arrogant, sloppy haste, made one of the most beautiful, idiotic mistakes I have ever seen. I sat up, my pulse quickening. What mistake he was in a rush, she said. He was in such a rush to get this done before the baby was announced that his lawyers let him draft an impossible clause. I want you to listen to me very carefully. Section 4, subparagraph B. It states that for this LLC to be considered fully funded and for the managing member to assume total control, quote, all assets listed in Appendix A must be transferred in full within 30 days of the signing date. I am not following. I said, today is day 29. Ilara, Mrs. Albright said, her voice electric. He has 1 day left. He has been so busy buying cars for his mistress and setting up his new house that he has been sloppy. He transferred your cash. He transferred the bulk of your Quantium stock. But did he transfer all of it? I thought back. He took everything. The brokerage accounts, the joint holdings. No. Mrs. Albright interrupted. He did not. He did not know to look. I checked your family's original corporate filings. What about your grandmother's trust? I gasped. My grandmother, one of the original founders of Quantium Dynamics, had left her initial block of founders' shares to me in an irrevocable trust. It was separate from my main inheritance. It was old, foundational, and I never touched it. Marcus did not even know it existed. He has no access to that trust, I said, my voice shaking. It is held offshore. It is still in my name. Exactly, Mrs. Albright said, and I could hear the triumph in her voice. He did not complete the transfer. He did not move all assets as stipulated by the very contract he wrote. He is in breach. She let that sink in. This LLC, Ilara, this entire monstrous agreement, it is not just voidable. It is void. It never happened. He did not just fail. He has legally given you back everything. I stood up, the power surging back into my veins. So what now? I asked. Now, Mrs. Albright said, her voice like ice. Now we let him continue. We let him think he has won. He has until midnight tomorrow to complete the transfer. He will fail. And then, Ilara, we do not just freeze his assets. We take them. I hung up the phone, the adrenaline singing in my veins. The despair I felt just moments ago was gone, replaced by the clean, sharp focus of a predator. I was no longer the victim. I was the trap. My laptop chimed, a new email. It was an automated notification from the corporate server. I read the subject line, and a cold smile touched my lips. He was so predictable. Notice of emergency shareholder and board meeting Quantium Dynamics. It was sent by Marcus, using his new, fraudulently acquired authority as the head of Thorn Vance Capital. He was calling for an emergency session. My husband, the man who thought he had just legally stolen my entire life, was making his final move. I opened the attached agenda. His objective was clear. He was going to use the massive block of my shares, which he believed he now controlled, to call a vote of no confidence against my father, the chairman. My father was currently in Europe, on a long overdue vacation, completely unreachable. Marcus planned to use his absence to seize control, ousting him and appointing himself as the new chairman of the board. I looked at the date and time of the proposed meeting. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, day 30. He was making his final play on the very last day of his contractual deadline. He was trying to take over my family's company before the clock ran out, before I could even realize the critical loophole he had left open. It was arrogant. It was greedy. It was perfect. I immediately dialed Mrs. Albright. He just called an emergency board meeting, I said, pacing the hotel room. Tomorrow at 3. He is moving to oust my father. Mrs. Albright's voice was pure ice. Good. Let him call his meeting. Let him get all his allies in one room. Let him put his entire plan on the public record. He thinks he is a king, I said, looking at the city lights. Then we shall arrange a coronation. She replied. I hung up and made my second call. This one was to my father's secure satellite phone. He answered on the third ring. His voice relaxed from a vineyard in Tuscany. Dad, I said, my voice cutting through the static. I am in trouble, and I need you to fly back. Right now. The relaxation in his voice vanished. I explained the situation. Not the affair, not the baby, but the corporate theft. I gave him the 30-second version. He was silent for a moment. What do you need? He asked, his voice now the CEO I had grown up respecting. I need your proxy. I said, I need your full voting rights, transferred to me by the time I walk into that boardroom. It is already done, he said. I am sending it to Albright's office now. I am on my way to the jet. My third call was back to Albright. He is on his way. His proxy is being wired to you. Excellent, she said. My team is drafting the emergency petition to nullify the LLC. It is based solely on the breach of contract. It is clean. It is undeniable. So we file it now? I asked, eager to move. No, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. We do not file it now. We let him walk into that room tomorrow thinking he is God. We let him give his speech. We let him call for the vote. We will have a courier waiting at the courthouse. I will give the signal at exactly 2:55 in the afternoon, not a minute sooner. Why so late? Because, she said, the clerk stamps the document, the contract is voided, and 2 minutes later, you walk into that room with the full proxy of the real majority shareholder. Timing, Ilara, is everything. I agreed. I had one last piece of preparation. Marcus had invited the board, assuming he held all the cards. I was going to invite a few extra guests. I opened my contacts and sent 2 simple text messages, inviting them to the Quantium Dynamics boardroom tomorrow at 3. One was to the head of the SEC's Enforcement Division. The other was to the top financial crimes reporter at the Boston Globe. The chessboard was set. The boardroom at Quantium Dynamics was a tomb of polished mahogany and stressed leather. The air was thick with a tension I could taste. At the head of the long table, Marcus and his father, Damien, sat like kings on a dais, their faces smug and triumphant. They had stacked the room with their allies. They thought this was a coronation. Marcus stood up at exactly 3 o'clock, straightening his custom-made suit. He cleared his throat, a theatrical performance of a man taking charge. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, he began, his voice echoing with false authority. We are at a pivotal moment for Quantium Dynamics, a moment that requires bold, new leadership. He looked around the table, his eyes full of practiced sincerity. As the new controlling shareholder through Thorne Vance Capital, I have a fiduciary duty to protect this company from stagnation. Therefore, I officially call for a vote of no confidence in our current chairman, who is, as you know, absent. He was about to continue when the heavy oak doors at the end of the room swung open. I walked in. Mrs. Albright was one step behind me, carrying a single elegant leather briefcase. Every head turned. The smug look on Marcus's face flickered, replaced by a flash of annoyance. "Excuse me for interrupting. Marcus," I said, my voice clear and cold, carrying to every corner of the room. "But there seems to be a slight issue with your claim of controlling shareholder." Marcus let out a short, condescending laugh. "Ilara, do not embarrass yourself. You signed the papers. I control everything. Now, if you'll please sit down, the adults are talking." I walked slowly toward the table, stopping just short of his chair. "It is funny you should mention the papers, Marcus," I said, "because I, unlike you, actually read them. You did not fulfill the contract." The color drained from his face. Damien sat bolt upright. "You forgot my grandmother's shares," I said, my voice dropping, but every person in the room heard me. "The original founder's shares. They were listed in Appendix A, which you clearly did not read. According to Section 12, Paragraph B of your own agreement, you had 30 days to transfer all assets. You failed." "You are lying!" Damien shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "Am I?" I turned to Mrs. Albright. "As of 2:55 this afternoon," Mrs. Albright announced, her voice like a judge's gavel, "the Superior Court has issued a permanent injunction nullifying the entity known as Thorne Vance Capital. The contract is void. All assets have reverted to their original owner." Marcus just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, his face a mask of waxy white shock. "I am not," I said, looking back at my husband. "All of my shares, all of my assets, have returned to my name, which means I am, once again, the true majority shareholder of this company, and, with the addition of my father's full proxy." On cue, the boardroom doors opened again, and my father walked in, looking rested and furious. "I would like to call a vote," I continued. "A vote to remove Marcus Thorne and Damien Thorne from any and all consulting positions, and to terminate all existing contracts with Thorne Industries, effective immediately." My father raised his hand. I second the motion. One by one, the board members, seeing the absolute, irreversible shift in power, raised their hands. I. It was unanimous. Marcus and Damien were completely and totally destroyed, as two security guards, whom I had asked to wait outside, stepped into the room. I looked at Marcus one last time. His entire future had just evaporated. "And Marcus," I said, as the guards flanked him, "Mrs. Albright will be waiting for you in the lobby." He looked at me, his eyes full of a hatred I had never seen. "She has 2 documents for you," I said, "the divorce papers and a copy of the arrest warrant for felony fraud. Thank you for listening to this story. I would love to connect with all of you, so please comment below and let me know where you are listening from and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.